Representative Barbara Lee from the 9th District of California, member of the Committee on Appropriations.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me thank the gentleman from New Jersey for yielding and for your leadership, Mr. Payne, in making sure that this resolution came to the floor today in a bipartisan way, and also for making sure that the history of African Americans, which of course started during the Middle Passage, is told not only here on the floor of Congress but in our public schools. So thank you very much, Mr. Payne. And let me thank our ranking member, Congresswoman Ileana Ross-Layton, and also Mr. Lantos for their leadership and for their assistance. And let me take a moment to acknowledge our staff, because they have worked very diligently, because not only do they work for us and this is a job, but they really do believe in what we're doing, Madam Speaker. Kristen Wells, Pearl Alice Marsh, Joan Condon, Janora Reed, and Ven Narella from my office. They have done remarkable work in a bipartisan fashion to get this resolution to the floor. This resolution, Madam Speaker, H.R. 272, commemorates a very somber and very serious occasion, the 200th anniversary of the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade by the United Kingdom. 200 years ago, on March 25th in 1807, Great Britain abolished the transatlantic slave trade in England and its colonies. This act began a worldwide revolt against the trade of human beings by other European nations. This is a very important milestone because it represents the beginning of the end of one of the most deplorable chapters in human history. Madam Speaker, on several occasions, like many of my colleagues, I have had the overwhelmingly heart-wrenching, and I mean heart-wrenching experience of traveling to the areas from where slaves were captured and put on ships for that deadly passage to America from Africa, and this is called, of course, the Middle Passage. One of my most distinct memories was standing on several occasions at the doors of no return in Ghana and in Senegal. Every slave castle has such a door. This door represents so many things to me. At this door, my ancestors stood on the shores of their homeland for the last time in their lives. At this door, a fate awaited them that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And over 400 years later, there I was, standing in the doors as one of their descendants who survived and returned. Standing in front of those doors, it's really impossible for me to ignore the fact that those who walked chained through those doors laid the foundation of many modern nations that have a colonial past, including the United States of America. The slave trade was vital to England and other European colonial powers. It provided the basis for modern capitalism to take root, generating immense wealth for business enterprises in colonial America and Europe. In many ways, the industrial strength of our nation was built on the blood, sweat, and tears of African American free labor. Today, this great country of ours, the United States of America, reaps the fruits of labor of these enslaved Africans, and we cannot forget that. However, in spite of the considerable riches enslaved Africans created for others, the slave trade also was really the lowest expression of humanity, and I mean the lowest expression. Captured Africans were subjected to the worst forms of cruelty and inhumanity. Millions were crammed in the hulls of slave ships like sardines in a can. The stench of filth and death reeked from the ships. Disease ran rampant through the ships. Traders used any means of violence to subdue insurrection, including torture, mutilation, and rape. The death rate during transport would reach as high as 50%. The world will never know really the exact number of enslaved Africans transported to America, but it is estimated that between 10 to 15 million were brought here to the United States, making it the largest forced migration in history. Given its immense significance, it is unfortunate that the transatlantic slave trade is a subject only briefly discussed in our nation's classroom. May I have another minute, Mr. Chairman?
Additional 2 minutes to the gentlelady from California.
The gentlewoman has an additional 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Payne. Because it's very important, I think, that we recognize that the slave trade is not really discussed in our nation's classrooms. And the study of the transatlantic slave trade really, if you ask me, should be a requirement for all of our public schools. It's essential that we acknowledge how slavery created attitudes of racism that persist in our society today. Sadly, the legacy of the slave trade and slavery are with us to this day. Just consider these facts. Nearly 1/4 of African Americans in the United States live in poverty. African Americans have one of the highest unemployment rates at 9.6%, and of the 46 million who lack health insurance, about 20% of are African American, and many of these are children. Slavery may be over, at least legalized slavery may be over, but in many ways the vestiges remain. That is why, Madam Speaker, it is important that we are considering this resolution today. We must honor the memory and the legacy and the courage of those who died in slavery and those who worked to end it. But at the same time, we must use this occasion to recommit ourselves to eliminating the disparities that exist in our society. We must not let their sacrifices be in vain. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Payne, and I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you.